of info is available at the moment around Wellington residents, and are they on their normal income? What proportion? I think it's just too early to tell, or where that statistics is at the moment. So.
I think on that one, for me, the Wellington is going to be relatively okay, I think, because of the government sector. So there's a huge proportion of the population who are going to receive their normal wages through this, because I can't imagine a scenario where the government stops paying their people at full rates. So that will help the coffee shops and the small retailers, and will ensure a level of business as usual after this thing. So for me, that's relatively reassuring. As reassuring as anything is at the moment, but I don't think we can simply assume that everyone is going to be back on their full wage as soon as this thing is finished. So as you guys have questions as we're wandering through this, feel free to put them in the chat box. We've got a few that have been sent through to us already, and a lot of them focus around tax and what payments are due when. So maybe, do you want to jump into that one first, Rhian?
Yep. So I think the first one is, I suppose, if you haven't already thought about it, that 7th of April terminal tax payment that's coming up. We are pretty sure that that one needs to be paid, and it's probably not going to be as much of a workaround when it comes to interest, using money interest from IRD. So we are advising our clients to pay that if you have the cash on hand, or use tax traders, which, an intermediary that helps you delay that payment out to June. Yeah, which is, I think, if people need the cash flow, if you're looking at if things are drying up and you need just to keep staff on, would advise using that that avenue just to buy you a bit of time. There is interest charged on it, but it's at a lot lower rate than IRD. So that's the first one, to kind of get that one out of the way. If you have the cash aside, but you need it to keep the lights on and keep your staff paid, use it for that, and we can push that out a couple of months. 7th of May, so that's your third provisional for this 2020 year. That's one that we can approach IRD if things are going to be tight, and we are probably advising that as well, just to keep the cash in the business. Like, yes, you might end up paying interest on it to either IRD or to tax traders, but it's better to just hold off if you can keep money in the business. But IRD is saying they'll wipe that use of money interest, but it does come down to IRD's discretion, so they can look at it and say, actually, you weren't adversely affected as much as you thought, so they can choose not to wipe those interest charges. But I think that IRD will be a bit more lenient on that, but it's still at their discretion. So, and then also the GST payments coming up, which a lot of people will be thinking of, because that could be another big one, but that's another one that we can delay through IRD or with using an intermediary body. I think with the tax side of things, just if we're not your accountant, or if someone else is, just speak to them about how to go around contacting IRD or talking about what your situation is. Those have been the bigger ones on the tax side of things.
I think the message, I guess, that I've been talking to people about is absolutely, as you said, so it's pay that 7th of April payment if you can. And the reason for that is that the 7th April payment relates to the March 2019 financial year, which is a period when COVID wasn't a thing. So the IRD aren't being particularly friendly about it at this stage. So make that payment in full if you can. But the 7th of May one is the one we're recommending that people either hold off paying the IRD, or if they do have the cash, I'm still saying not to pay the IRD, because we don't quite know where this thing is going to land. So if it stops in a relatively short amount of time, then you don't need that cash. So it would have been okay to pay the IRD, but if it drags on, we want the cash in our accounts. So for that 7th of May one, let's just wait and see how this thing plays out. There are some other options around it, but yeah, for the time being, hold on to the cash. There's a question here. So can you help our staff with government assistance? We have young guys on temporary visas. So we've got a lot of construction workers in Wellington at the moment, primarily around Transmission Gully and things like that. So they've got workers in from Aussie who are trying to complete a project. So for those guys, whether they've returned to Australia or not, the government subsidy is available for them. So The subsidy is open to businesses who are operating in New Zealand and have workers who are on legal visas. So if you've got an illegal worker, then you're not going to get the subsidy, and that sort of makes sense. But if they're on a legal working visa, then they're open to that visa in the same way as anyone else. So they'd be paid $350 a week for 12 weeks if they're part-timers, or $585.80 per week for 12 weeks if they're full-time employees, in the same way that a New Zealand resident would be entitled to that pay. Another question we've got coming through is around whether they need to pay the subsidy directly to the employees. And there's a lot of confusion around this, maybe because the subsidies are called very similar things, and they're for very similar things as well. So there's two main subsidies. The first one is for employees who were required to self-isolate when they returned to New Zealand, or if they were caring for someone who had to self-isolate. That was primarily a subsidy for before we went into lockdown. So it doesn't apply to everyone now, just because we have to stay at home. So if you were required to self-isolate and you were registered with Healthline, then the employer first had to pay the employee their sick leave. And then once that sick leave was used up, the government would pay $585 per week, which the employer passed through to the employee in lieu of having their sick leave taken up, or in lieu of them having no sick leave left. The other one is the wage subsidy, and this is paid at exactly the same rate, and this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. If we can show that we've got a 30% reduction in turnover for 4 weeks, which is relatively certain for every single business, given that we can't trade, the government will pay us a subsidy at $585 per employee. Now, they will pay that to us in a lump sum as soon as we make the application. I don't know, Rhian, how quickly your customers have been paid, but I've had a couple paid pretty quick and others paid slowly.
Yeah, it's been quite varied on my end too. I thought they started coming through quickly, but maybe there's just a bit of a backlog that's happening now with everybody jumping in there.
Yeah, so that money will come through when it's processed in a lump sum. So those guys are then using that money to pay wages as and when they want. So it sort of just falls into your normal cash flow. It doesn't have to sit on its own in a separate account and just be spent on wages, because we know that cash flow doesn't quite work like that. But once we've got the money, we are required to use our best endeavours to keep people on 80% of their normal pay. Now, best endeavours it's a bit of a fluffy term, right? So my best endeavours might be slightly different to your best endeavours, but we've all got to try and keep people on 80% pay. If that's not possible, then it becomes a conversation with your employees as to what they'll accept. So we had a scenario with a customer where it showed that if we paid people 80% of their normal wage with no income, we're going to be bankrupt within a couple of weeks. So for those guys, no amount of best endeavours could keep everyone at 80%. We then went to the employees and said, hey, here's our cash flow forecast, here's our projections. If we all want to keep a job at the back end of this thing, we need to accept a lower pay rate. So in that scenario, we got the staff to accept a $585 a week payment from the employer. So the employer was basically just paying the subsidy to the employee. It basically breached every employment law we could possibly think of. But the employees were okay with it because it meant that they had a job at the end of the day. So the subsidies get very muddled because the numbers are the same, and because people are expecting us to only have to pay their employees $585 a week, when in reality we need to pay them 80% using best endeavours, and then we can drop it down if we can get them on board.
With your other guys that are on Irish passports and Australian ones, if they're not employees of your business, i.e. so they're contractors or sole traders here, Yeah, definitely get them to get in touch with us if they're struggling. But yeah, the ones that are employed by you, then you should be able to apply under your business. Under your business. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, so if someone is your employee, you need to apply for them, and it's not that you're applying for them necessarily, you're applying for you on the basis that you keep them employed as your staff member to 80%. If they are a contractor to you or a sole trader, then that's up to them to make the application. The application is very straightforward. All you need to know is if you're a sole trader, your IRD number and date of birth. So hopefully you know those two things. And then if you are an employer, you need to know the dates of birth and ID numbers for all of your employees. So as far as government bureaucracy goes, it's probably the easiest application funding form that I've ever seen in my life. I've got another question here about how, sorry, I'm reading it as we go because as I said earlier, we're all making this up on the fly. The question is along the lines of how much of a reduction in turnover should I be forecasting? And what we're saying for every single customer is it's simply too hard to tell, but that if they project a 20% reduction in their bottom line, they can then see how strong their balance sheet is going to be and then decide on which staff they keep or lay off. At the same time, if they do a 50% reduction scenario, they can compare the business as usual against a 20% reduction against a 50% reduction, and that data starts to give a really clear picture as to who people should and shouldn't keep within their businesses. Got another one here, which is which reports should I be using within my Xero account? Your profit and loss report in your Xero account is going to obviously tell you how much money you're making or not making. Your balance sheet is going to show you what assets you've got, what assets you don't have, so that gives you some sort of strength as well. The report that I think everyone should use, and this is probably underutilized by everyone, is the income by customer report. What that'll do is show you all of your customers, and you can then see who your big ones are and who your small ones are. Over the next 4 weeks, because we're all sitting on our bum doing nothing, I would recommend contacting every one of your big customers. You've then got the ability to build a really tight relationship with them over the next few weeks and get an idea from them as to how quickly they think they're going to be back online. If your big customers think they're going to be back online pretty quickly, you then factor that into your scenario planning as to whether you thought your income was going to be down 20% or 50%. So as businesses, the more we communicate with each other and the more transparent we are with what's going on for us, I think we'll all come out of it in a better place.
Ken, with that question, with the wage and salary subsidy, is there a deadline to register, especially if we are not showing a 30% fall in income at this stage and may not until late April? So what they're saying is you can forecast that drop in income. So yeah, your sales might be okay for March, but come April, you know, it's really gonna die. Then that's when you can apply now for that subsidy from, you know, this point for the next 12 weeks. So if you can predict or you can forecast a drop in income over April, May or June, out to June the 9th, I think is the date they called it, you can apply for the subsidy. So that's where a few of our customers are at the moment as well. They're like, you know, our profit and loss looks okay for January, February, March because it didn't quite affect us yet. But come May, we're not going to have really any sales, or, you know, especially over these next 4 weeks, it's really going to tank. So definitely apply if you can reasonably see that your turnover is going to drop quite a bit in the next few months. Through the application as well, they're not requesting the information. It'll come a bit later. I think they'll start looking at, you know, we don't actually know how they're going to kind of assess it. It's based on trust the system that they've built at the moment. So yeah, definitely apply if you can see that your turnover is going to tank.
Yeah. I've got another one here, which this is probably tongue-in-cheek, but I'll answer it anyway. How do I afford for my accountant to help me through this difficult time? Look, I think for us as a firm, we're doing a lot of work for customers and simply just not charging for it because we're in a position where we can help. So ethically, we should be helping. That's not to say we're doing free work for everyone, but at the end of the day, if there's a business owner who can't afford to pay yet needs support, we're happy to support them. There is funding available through Wellington NZ. So Wellington NZ have a fund where they basically co-fund professional advice and professional support. So if you had a scenario where you needed to do a whole lot of scenario planning to help keep business employees employed, they would pay for half of the cost of it. So there's options around. If you want to contact me, I'm happy to pass you on Wellington NZ's details, and then they can get you the government or the council government funding to get through that.
Yeah, I think what we'll start seeing, we haven't seen as much yet, but with the government announcement about the business loans coming into play, we're gonna face a few more questions around what we need to supply to the bank, etc. It'll be like any other normal funding if you've got a strong enough balance sheet. So that was one of the key words around the announcement, is the business solvent, which some people might not take into consideration, but it's quite a if your balance sheet isn't showing that you're in a net asset position, then you might face difficulties when approaching the bank. Having your accountant paint the picture around what that means can help. But yeah, if the bank's just getting your balance sheet from last year and it's in a negative position, you're gonna have more of a story to tell or fight to put up against the bank. But that'll be the main thing, just getting your numbers in order again for if you do need to apply for it, if it looks like you'll need that extra funding and your cash flow is going to support it later down the track, and when things start picking up again. Yeah, that was one of the things that I picked out of that announcement yesterday. But, yeah.
The other thing as well is I've had people call me today asking if they could go on a mortgage repayment holiday at home, and the perception around that is completely wrong. So everyone's looking at it thinking, well, some people are looking at it thinking I'm going to get a couple of months free on my mortgage, which is entirely the wrong way to look at it. Basically, they're going to take the money that you should be paying today and add it on at the end of your mortgage. So if you've got a 30-year mortgage, all of a sudden your mortgage becomes 31 or 32 years and you get pushed out further from being mortgage free. So for people tempted to take the mortgage holiday, I would strongly recommend against it at basically any cost, simply because it pushes out the length of the mortgage. So what I'm talking about is for your mortgage at home. What Rhiann's covering is your mortgage or your loan at work. So you sort of need to view them together, but they are separate things. You don't want to be the bank to your business. It should be up to the bank to fund your business. So think about the two separately and consider what you should do sort of in both scenarios.
Yeah, it's all about how they feed into your plan. So if you're wanting to keep more in the business, or you're wanting to take less out to pay your home loan, those are kind of just the scenarios you need to think about and look at in terms of what extra support you do get, or what you can handle without taking on, say, a mortgage repayment holiday or pulling down extra debt that might just make it a bit tougher later. But everyone's got to look at what the situation is now, what it looks like in 6 months' time, or even 4 weeks' time, then 6 months, and planning from there.
And I think when we are giving information to the bank, often my approach has been to give them as little as possible. Over the last kind of week and a half, that position has completely changed, where I'm now saying to people, give the bank absolutely everything. Now let's make sure it's accurate and complete. So let's give them the full accurate picture, so that they can look at what we've given them, know that it's real and that we're not effectively trying to bullshit them. And with that, they're giving really quick yeses, whereas in the scenarios where people haven't been as forthcoming with the full picture, they've given a much quicker no. So it's simply about giving them what they need so that they can say yes as quickly as possible. probably want to wrap this up shortly because I sort of wanted to keep it to half an hour because we've all got jobs to get on with. The final thing that I've got here is, what should I be doing over the next 4 weeks? And I know for me, there's a couple of things around, I'll come to you at the end, but for me, I think what we need to do is kind of keep our people happy, because we've all invested too much in our people to kind of get them on board and to get them trained and to get them working and being profitable contributing staff members, that if we let all of our employees go over the next wee while, I think we're really going to shoot ourselves in the foot with the long-term viability of our businesses. So the more people we can hang on to, I think the better placed we're going to be to come out of the back end of this thing in a really strong position. So that's one thing. And then the other side of it, I guess, is, and this is cliched, so I really hate it, but we've all sat here for the past 10 years and said, I wish we had more time to work on our businesses instead of in it. Well, congratulations, you can't work in your business anymore. So we've got kind of a nice little window where we can do some work on our business. And when we go back to work, it's not going to be business as usual. But if we can spend the next 4 weeks thinking about what our business should look like when business as usual eventually gets back, then we're going to be better placed to kind of take the opportunities that sort of flow from that.
Yeah, I think the tough time that's hitting everybody, like, it's another cheesy one, but for our business, it is always about the people. So, you know, if we can keep people employed, and that's kind of where we're coming at when we're talking to our clients. First of all, if you can keep your people employed and keep the lights on is kind of key, but there are going to be some hard calls. So I think people also need to think about, you know, it's a rough time, and yeah, these hard calls have to be made, but I think we just do our best to use the information that we've got to make those calls, I don't know, I suppose a little easier. It's never going to be easy if you have to let people go, but yeah, so it's not where we want to get to, but at the end of the day, we're running a business and we need to keep the lights on for both our families and the people that we employ. So we take that kind of approach to it and do the best we can, and hey, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Hey, so thank you guys all for joining us today. We'll be back online tomorrow, 3 o'clock, to run through any questions you've got between now and then. So if there is anything you want to go through, feel free to drop us an email, jump on our website. We've got a frequently asked questions on there. There's also a couple of other videos we've done recently which address some of the issues that businesses are facing at the moment. So yeah, as I said, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back again soon. Thanks.